All right, Algebra 2 fans, today we're going to talk about the inverse of a function. So first of all, we have notation for that. That is f with a negative 1 of x. You read this as f inverse. So this is red, f inverse. Okay? You read this as f inverse, f to the negative 1, f to the negative 1 of x. So this is read f inverse. Okay, you don't say negative 1, we say f inverse of x. All right, so first thing we're going to do, change all of your function notation. So your f of x, your g of x, your h of x's. So you're going to change f of x to y. Inverse literally means we switch x and y. Just switch the letters. You do not touch the numbers, the coefficients. So if you see an x, you cross it out, put a y. You see a y, you cross it out, you put an x. That's it. You do not touch the numbers. Now we solve for y. Solve for y. And then when we're all done making it say y equals, we change that y back to f. Well, technically now it's f inverse of x. Okay? So when we solve for y, we're writing the equations in terms of x. So we change it to f inverse of x. Okay, so let's practice. So it's all algebraic here. First thing I'm going to do is make that say a y. So in an interest of space, I'm going to cross this out. I'm just going to put a big fat y over the top. Now I'm going to switch my x and y. So I write x equals 3/4 y plus 2/5. I didn't do anything with numbers. All I did was wherever I see an x, I put a y. Wherever I see a y, I put an x. That's it. Now I just have to make this say y equals. And what's I got? Positive 2/5 right over here. I'm going to subtract, so I have x minus 2/5 equals 3/4 y. And now the rest is algebra. You would divide by 3/4. I'm not gonna divide by 3/4 because some of you no. I think it'll be easier if you were to multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply everything by 4/3. Okay, so 4/3 and 3/4, those cancel out, so you have y equals, and then 4/3 x minus 4 times 2, 3 times 5. And algebra's done. Now all I have to do is rule 4, change y to f inverse. That is the inverse of the equation. Okay? That's it. That's all we have to do. It's just simply an algebraic step. That's all that it is. It's simply an algebraic step. All right, I got one question to ask. You're going to see it later on the paper, but I want to ask it now. What's the slope of the original equation? That's right. The slope was 3/4. That's right. It's 3/4. Rise over run. Remember rise over run for slope? And now what's the slope of the new equation? 4/3. That's right. That's the slope. What do you notice about those slopes? That's right. They're reciprocals. All we did was switch the x and the y. This is rise over run. Now this becomes run over rise. That's all that it was. You'll see it. We'll write it down. We'll write that down in a bit. All right, let's look at number 2. All right, so number 2, here's a g of x. So I'm going to cheat here and save myself some space. I'm going to write this as, cross this out and write this as y equals. Now, we switch the x and the y. So wherever there's an x, we place a y. So this x right here, we write as a y. And then this y, we write as an x. Everything else is algebra now. Now all I have to do is make this say y equals. So I'll start by adding 5/6. And now how do I get rid of the 2/3? Yeah, same thing like we did up here. It'll be so much easier. We're going to multiply by 3/2. Multiply by the reciprocal. See, I'm running out of room again. Okay. So I have, those all cancel. So we have y equals, and then 3/2 times x is just 3/2x. And then here I have 3 times 5 is 15, and then 2 times 6 is 12. So I have plus 15/12, and then you're in Algebra 2, we're going to reduce that. Okay, so we're going to reduce, I'll reduce it after I rewrite my question. And so we're going to change y to f inverse. Well, here we're using the letter g, so it's g inverse of x is equal to 3/2x plus, we're dividing everything by 3 here, so 5/4. So I divided these by 3, so I made that a 5, and I made this a 4. I reduced. Okay. I actually could have done it here. 3 goes into 6 twice. So we have 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 2 is 4. So there we are. There is our new equation. Again, look at the slope. This slope was 2/3. This slope is 3/2. That's right, all we did was flip them. All right, number 3. So now this one is not written in an f of x notation or g of x notation because we did not have this thing saying y equals. Okay, so we don't have to worry about step 1 and step 4. All we have to do is step 2 and step 3. Okay, so number 1, we're going to make it say, we're going to swap out all the x's and y's. So this x now becomes a y, and that y becomes an x. And now all we have to do is make it say y equals. So I'm going to subtract 2. So I'm going to put minus 2x plus 6. And then we just divide everything by 5. And we're done. There. Y equals negative 2/5 x plus 6/5. We would reduce fractions if we have to. But that is our answer. That is the inverse of the original equation. All right, here, look at this one now. It's got a radical involved. No big deal. It's just algebra. Remember, step 1, h of x. We're going to change that to just plain old y. Okay, so I'm trying to save space here. So now we're going to do our switch x's and y's. So this y becomes an x. And that x becomes a y. And now we just have to make this equation say y equals. Okay. Step 1. Well, can't do anything with the radical yet, but we have to get rid of this 5. So if it's a plus 5 on the right, we subtract it to the left. And now I have a radical here. How do we get rid of the radical? We just square both sides. Okay, so when I square this radical, the radical cancels. So I'm left with a y minus 3, and then do not square this out. Leave it in factored form. Do not square that out. So now I have 2 more steps. This does not say y equals yet. So all I have to do is add 3 to the other side. So y equals x minus 5 squared and then plus 3. There. And now it has our y equals. Notice I did not square this out. Leave it this way. Do not square that out. And all you're going to do is make more work for yourself. And now we're just going to do our last step. Change y to their f inverse format. So what letter? We used h of x here. So it's h inverse of x is equal to parentheses x minus 5 squared plus 3. I'll slide that over, make sure you guys can see that. There. Okay, that's it. This problem's done. I'm going to try to make sure we have enough room. Alrighty, what are we doing now? That's right, notice this one does not say f of x or g of x, it just says plain old y. So we have our work a little bit easier. We don't have to worry about any extra steps. First things first, swap out, or we don't have to worry about 1. There's no f of x to worry about. And we don't have to worry about 4. There's no f of inverse to worry, there's no f of x to worry about. So we're just 2 and 3. So step 1, we're going to switch the x and the y. So this is x equals 5 minus y squared. And now I have to make this say y equals. Solving for y. All right, now, in order to solve for y, bumped my phone. There. In order to make this say y equals, okay, I think what I'm going to do is the following. Because I have a negative y squared here, I'm going to take this negative y squared and move it to the left. And I'm going to take this positive x and move it to the right. So we have y squared equals 5 minus x. Okay? And now what do we have to do? How do we unsquare something? That's right, we just square root. And remember, if we're taking the square root of both sides, you have to remember to say plus and minus. So I'll make sure I write it nice and big. So this is just left with a y. And then don't forget your plus and minus. And then we have square root of 5 minus x. Okay, there, done. That one's done. I think my pen is running out. All right. Let's see, we just have a couple more to do. What are we going to do first here? Let's do number 6. A lot of algebra going on here. Again, we're not worrying about step 1. We're not worried about step 4. We're just doing these 2 steps right here for number 6. So we have x equals 9y squared plus 2. And now we just got to make it say y equals. All right, I don't have that negative y squared business, so I'm going to subtract 2. Do not take the square root until after you get rid of this 9. Right? When the only time you take square root of both sides is when there's no number in front of the x squared or y squared. Okay, so I have a 9 here, so I have to divide everything by 9. Okay, this is gone. I'm going to rewrite it nice and neat over here. So y squared equals x minus 2 over 9. Okay. Now we take the square root of both sides. And then again, don't forget, you gotta say plus and minus. So y equals plus and minus the square root of x minus 2 over 3. Why did I put it over 3? That's right, because the square root of 9 is 3. So I left the top, and I just put over 3. All right, last question. It looks like a doozy, but it's not. Okay? Looks like a doozy, but it's not. So we start by switching. Then what do? That's right, we subtract the 3 because we have to get this all by itself. It's all algebra. Now how do I get rid of the radical? That's right, we have to square both sides. I wonder if I can square with my orange highlighter, you guys can see it. Okay. Remember, do not square this out. Leave it squared. Okay. Look at what I'm going to do. I got a negative y squared on the right. So I'm going to take this and move it to the left. I'm going to take this positive junk, move it to the right. So if I move this positive junk to the right, that's right, it becomes a negative. So if I have this negative going to the left, all right, I have positive. So y squared equals 5 minus parentheses x minus 3 squared. And now what do we have to do? All right, we just have to square root everything, and then we're done. Again, when we take the square root, what do you have to remember? That's right, you got to remember your plus and minus. Don't forget your plus and minus. So we have y equals plus and minus square root of this big ginormous mess. And you leave it as a big ginormous mess because that's what we're supposed to do. Big ginormous mess, that's how we leave it. Okay. All right, last question. We talked about it, I know we didn't write it down yet. Remember these slopes right here? The slope was 3/4, the inverse was 4/3. So what's the slope of a linear equation of the inverse? It's literally the inverse. It's the reciprocal of the original slope. Okay. So if this slope is 3/4, then this slope is 4/3. If you have a slope of 2, then the slope is 1/2, the reciprocal of the original. Okay? We literally switch the x and the y. All right, folks, that is our day 1 of the notes for inverses of functions.